One of the lessons we learned in our last Olympics from an administrative and operations level is that we have to change a few of the, actually a number of things which we do before the Olympics. One of them is to assist us as a country to start looking at the Olympics as a process and not an event. A lot of the focus has been on the final 16 or so days where the top athletes, about 10,000 of them, participate in the Olympics. But before then, millions of athletes across the world make attempts through qualification rounds, through competitions to be able to qualify. And that is where a lot of our problem have come, because a lot of our athletes, especially in the non-athletics event, they are not able to get opportunities to qualify. One, because they start the qualification process very late. Alternatively, the environment, the infrastructure does not accommodate them. And on a long-term process is obviously to improve the infrastructure within the country, where when we talk of racket sports, ball sports, or things like aquatic sports like swimming, we have the best infrastructure spread across the country. It's unfortunate that we've had our top athletes first use of international level of infrastructure being at the top level competition. While in the other economies or in the other countries, these are just things which they interact with right at the beginning. First, when they are young, and secondly, for some, when they are starting the sports, so they get to experience to use them. We found that the medium and short term is to go into partnerships. One of the strategic objectives for us in this period, and as we prepare ourselves for Paris 2024, is to enter into strategic partnerships which assist us in terms of the areas where we are weak. We've identified France for natural reason that it's where we are going to have the Paris 2024 Olympics. And we've been looking out on possible places, possible cities, possible towns which we can partner with. And we are very happy that we had several visits to Miramas in the southern part of France, and they have expressed their willingness and they're excited about going into partnership with us to get several opportunities for our athletes. Topmost will be a pre-Olympics camp where we'll send all those who will have qualified for Olympics several weeks or a few weeks before the Olympics to go and train. This worked very well when we sent our athletes to Kurume. Obviously, we intended it to be much bigger, but because of the COVID pandemic, we had to restrict the number of days, the number of athletes who could travel. And that way, as much as it was a success for us, we feel we could have done much more. And this time we are planning to do it in a much better, in a bigger scale, to be able to send our Olympic team probably 40, 45 or 60 days in advance to go and prepare, to go and train, and even have warm-up matches before the Olympics. But before then, we are also in partnership to look at possible areas which we can start sending our athletes to France. The advantage of sending them is that once they go to train, they'll also be able to get top-level competitions. So assuming they go there for only 14 or 1 month every year, it means they go get training within excellent facilities, get exposure because they'll be competing, just like we see the Malkia Strikers do in Brazil. Every weekend they are playing top-level clubs, which for African standards, especially in certain sports, that's as good as it gets because you're competing with the top players, the top athletes in Europe, which is very, very good for us. So the intention of this second visit to France will be to go discuss and enter into a memorandum of understanding. Later next year, or probably the first quarter of next year, we hope to go into an agreement where we'll have all the parties involved. The city of Miramas, the region, and the athletic club of Miramas, our government, through the Ministry of Sports and the National Olympic Committee, so that with that particular partnership we can be able to offer opportunities for athletes. A specific area in which we are hoping to benefit will be technical support. Miramas has employed through its infrastructure a lot of top-level coaches who we hope can be available to support and work with our own coaches when we send our athletes to France. We also hope that they can also benefit in the areas where they feel they can be able to gain from Kenya by then sending their own technical team to come and work with us, especially in the athletics area where we are very strong and they would like to benefit. We also want to send our youth teams. As you all know, we are greatly focused on Dakar 2026 as a turning point for where we can be able to say Kenya can start becoming strong in the non-traditional area, and that's where we'll be exposing a lot of our youngsters to start preparing, to start training. We hope that we can get an opportunity for them to stay several weeks to get training and competition. Schools program, the city has expressed an interest in sending some of their school children to come to Kenya, and likewise we'll be identifying several schools in which we can be able to send them to go to France. The idea is beyond sports, that there'll be a cultural exchange program. Each of the children will learn from the others in terms of their culture, in terms of their language, and this will be good exposure for the children from both countries. And the other one will be infrastructure. As you know, we are looking at improving our youth center, the Olympic Africa Center, and we hope that the partnership through with Miramas can be able to give us that support.
Technically, I was the director of the games in terms of Kenyans' participation. So when we started, we had certain goals that we had to achieve. We had a plan put in place. And of course, the reason why we called for this meeting today was to do an appraisal of our plan. There was a process that was laid down. We had this thing broken into phases. And we wanted to find out if whatever goals that we had set, we achieved them. So the people who are on the ground, we wanted to look at the plan vis-a-vis the actuals that was experienced on the ground. And the reason why we are doing this is to improve on our processes and, of course, get to learn the challenges that the managers or the heads of the various departments experienced, so that we can incorporate in our future plans. It's about coming up with a process or coming up with a plan that can work, can improve what we did and for the future. So today is basically collecting information that was experienced on the ground vis-a-vis, looking at the plan that we had in place and to see whether whatever we had in place was appropriate. And if not, then we'll have to see where to adjust. The reason why we have to appraise the plan is we wanted to see whether whatever we had in place was sufficient and if we did them effectively. And if not, if whatever we did was not right, then okay, drop whatever that we should have not done, incorporate new things that we could have learned from the rest. And if there's anything that we could do better or do better than any other team, that can give us an edge over other teams. So it's about just refining our plan for the future. We've not had such a session before. People come, as you've rightly stated, people come, go for the games, they write reports, then nobody gets to look at the reports and see how well they can implement the reports for future use. So in my view or in my opinion, I want us to come up with a proper document, more or less a policy that can guide people in the future in terms of managing the games.
And the CDM, before I let you go?
I would say the reason why we performed well is in two fronts, in terms of athlete selection and in terms of management selection, and again coupled by the support of the government. The process of qualifying, the qualification process was well managed. It was well funded by the government, and that must have exposed a lot of teams to competition. So at the end of the day, people went through qualifications, or the teams that had to do their selections here at home gave us good quality athletes. And of course, having gone through 45 days at camp, with additional team support members like the Elite Commission, the mental skills training, the physio, the nutritionist, those are some of the things that made us perform well, because the selections were done right. Yeah, so we got the right athletes, and the managers too. We were given able and cooperative, people who cooperated, people who understood or knew what they were doing. I think that made us perform. And of course, in future, if we can enhance some of these, other components beside the physical preparations of the teams, then we'll continue doing well and better.
Recently you were elected to...
It's not only in Kenya, it's in Africa. You see, when I sit at the board, I sit where the policies are made. I sit, we determine the rules of the game, we determine where the competitions will be held. So it's more of trying to represent the African countries in that board, that they get the fair share, or they get to be treated as other partners. So me sitting at that board gives me an opportunity also to contribute, and of course bringing in the perspective of the African standard or way of doing things to be incorporated at that level of planning. Because when you are not there, decisions will be made and you will have to comply, whether they favor you or not. But when you are there, you're able to, question or bring in your side of the story.